Admiral, the humans are singing at us. Admiral Vexthal of the Hegemony war machine had conquered 17 star systems, subjugated 43 different species, and never once heard his intelligence coordinator sound confused. Until today. Explain. Admiral Vexthal commanded, though part of him already suspected that whatever explanation came next would defy every principle of military logic he'd learned in 30 years of conquest. Sir, their response to our invasion fleet is... Intelligence Coordinator Zekmer paused, consulting his instruments as if hoping the readings would change. They're broadcasting educational content about geometric shapes, specifically a song about circles, squares, and triangles designed to teach children basic mathematical concepts. Admiral Vexthal stared at the tactical display, showing the most powerful military armada in galactic history, being approached by a single human agricultural vessel called Maryhead a Little Lamb, a ship that was cheerfully transmitting nursery rhymes while heading directly toward enough firepower to glass a planet. This was not how invasions were supposed to begin. Are they attempting psychological warfare? Admiral Vexthal asked, grasping for any explanation that fit within his military training. Unknown. Sir, our xenopsychology specialists believe the content is genuinely educational. The vessel is now broadcasting something called the Wheels on the bus, which appears to be a lesson about transportation mechanics and circular motion. Admiral Vexthal had spent 3 decades perfecting the art of military conquest. He had analyzed human defensive capabilities, studied their tactical doctrines, and prepared countermeasures for every possible response to hegemony invasion. He had contingency plans for fierce resistance, strategic withdrawal, diplomatic negotiation, even surrender. He had no contingency plan for nursery rhymes. But this was only the opening move in what would become the most devastating military defeat in galactic history, not because humans had superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but because they had done something no military strategist had ever considered possible. They had changed the fundamental rules of warfare itself. 3 months later, Admiral Vexthal would find himself filing the most unprecedented report in hegemony military history: mission status, complete success, strategic outcome, total defeat, recommendation, immediate restructuring of all hegemony military and political doctrine, based on principles learned from enemy cooperation strategies. But to understand how humanity accomplished the impossible, conquering their conquerors through aggressive friendliness, you need to understand the context that led to the most bizarre invasion in galactic history. The hegemony of advanced beings was exactly what its name suggested: a military confederation that had achieved galactic dominance through 3,000 years of superior technology, strategic brilliance, and an unshakable belief in their right to guide less advanced civilizations toward prosperity and order. The hegemony's approach to expansion was sophisticated and, by galactic standards, remarkably humane. They didn't destroy civilizations, they integrated them. They didn't eliminate species, they elevated them to junior partnership status. Conquered worlds retained their cultural identity and local autonomy, while accepting hegemony authority in matters of interstellar governance and military organization. That it was enlightened imperialism, and it had worked flawlessly for 3 millennia, until they encountered humanity. The problem wasn't that humans were militarily superior. Intelligence reports confirmed that human technology was adequate, but not exceptional. Their military forces were smaller than hegemony standards, and their defensive infrastructure was laughably insufficient for resisting a determined invasion. The problem was that humans kept refusing to be conquered. Not through military resistance, the hegemony could have overcome that easily. Not through diplomatic maneuvering. Human negotiators were competent, but not particularly sophisticated. Not even through economic leverage or political intrigue. Humans refused to be conquered by being aggressively helpful. When hegemony diplomats approached human representatives with standard integration offers, technological advancement, military protection, junior partnership status, humans thanked them politely and suggested alternative arrangements based on mutual cooperation between equals. When hegemony officials explained the benefits of joining galactic civilization under hegemony guidance, humans expressed enthusiasm for joining galactic civilization and offered to share their own innovations and perspectives to make it even better. When hegemony leaders clarified that integration was not optional for species that had achieved interstellar capability, humans nodded understandingly and asked if there were ways to improve the integration process to make it more beneficial for everyone involved. It was like trying to conquer a species that genuinely believed everyone could be friends if they just tried hard enough. Supreme Commander Talvok had been patient. Young species often needed time to understand the realities of galactic politics. The hegemony had made increasingly generous offers, advanced technology, favorable trade agreements, significant autonomy within the hegemony structure. Each offer was politely declined, with humans explaining that they preferred to contribute to galactic civilization as equal partners, rather than junior members of someone else's empire. This response baffled hegemony leadership. Every species eventually recognized the benefits of hegemony membership. The combination of protection, prosperity, and technological advancement made integration essentially inevitable. But humans had not only continued to refuse, they had begun influencing other species to question their own relationships with the hegemony. Human colonies were attracting immigrants from hegemony worlds. Human innovations were being adopted by non-hegemony species. Human diplomatic initiatives were creating new alliances that bypassed hegemony authority entirely. Most concerning, humans were spreading dangerous ideas about independence, self-determination, and the possibility of galactic cooperation based on equality rather than hierarchy. The decision to invade human space had been inevitable. Humans were not just refusing integration, they were threatening the stability of the entire galactic order. By demonstrating that hegemony membership might not be as beneficial as the hegemony claimed, Admiral Vextel's invasion plan was a masterpiece of military efficiency. Simultaneous strikes on all major human colonies, coordinated neutralization of defensive assets, rapid deployment of occupation forces to maintain order during integration. It was the same plan that had succeeded hundreds of times before, refined over 3 millennia of successful campaigns. The plan was essentially foolproof, except that it was based on the assumption that the enemy would behave like an enemy. And humans, as Admiral Vextel was discovering, seemed fundamentally incapable of behaving like enemies even when they were being invaded. Admiral, Communications Officer Telvar reported, "The human vessel is requesting permission to come aboard our flagship. They say they have educational materials they'd like to share with our crew." Admiral Vextel felt reality tilting around him. "They want to board our ship during an invasion?" "Yes, sir. They're transmitting standard diplomatic protocols and requesting a cultural exchange meeting. They say they have learning opportunities they think we'd find interesting." "Learning opportunities," Admiral Vextel repeated slowly. "They're approaching the most powerful military force in galactic history to offer us learning opportunities. That appears to be correct, sir." Admiral Vextel realized he was witnessing something that had no precedent in military history. An enemy that was responding to invasion by trying to make friends with the invading force. "What's their military escort?" he asked, assuming the diplomatic approach must be cover for some kind of tactical maneuver. "None, sir, Tactical Officer," Kolvix reported. "The vessel is alone, no weapons, no shields, no support ships. It appears to be genuinely defenseless. They're approaching a military invasion fleet with a single unarmed ship offering educational services," Admiral Vextel said, trying to make sense of a situation that violated every principle of warfare he'd ever learned. "Yes, sir, and Admiral." They seemed genuinely excited about it. The enthusiasm was unmistakable in the human communications. These weren't desperate civilians trying to buy time or mercy. These weren't cunning negotiators setting up elaborate deceptions. These were people who seemed genuinely thrilled about the opportunity to meet aliens and share educational experiences. It was either the most sophisticated psychological warfare Admiral Vextel had ever encountered, or humans were so fundamentally optimistic that they treated military invasion as a networking opportunity. Grant them permission to dock, Admiral Vextel decided, but maintain full security protocols. Whatever they're planning, we'll be ready for it. The human delegation that boarded Admiral Vextel's flagship consisted of 3 individuals who appeared to be completely unaware that they were walking into the command center of an invasion force. Dr. Sarah Martinez introduced herself as an elementary education specialist with the Terra Colony Education Authority. Marcus Johnson identified himself as a physical education coordinator. Professor Elena Vasquez gave her credentials as Director of Cultural Exchange Programs. They were teachers. Admiral Vextel had expected military commanders, desperate diplomats, or perhaps human leaders attempting to negotiate surrender terms. Instead, he was facing 3 educators who seemed genuinely delighted to meet him. Admiral Vextel. Dr. Martinez greeted him with the enthusiasm of someone meeting a celebrity. "We're so excited to be here. We've heard amazing things about hegemony educational systems, and we can't wait to share some of our teaching methods with you." Admiral Vextel stared at her, trying to process the disconnect between her cheerful demeanor and the fact that she was addressing the commander of an invasion fleet. "Dr. Martinez, you understand that this is a military operation. We are here to conquer human space." "Oh yes, we know," Professor Vasquez replied enthusiastically. "And what a wonderful opportunity for cultural exchange. You'll be able to observe human educational techniques firsthand, and we'll be able to learn about hegemony administration and governance. It's going to be fantastic." The casual way the humans discussed military conquest as if it were a field trip challenged every assumption Admiral Vextel had about warfare, diplomacy, and basic survival instincts. "Dr. Martinez," he said carefully, "I believe there may be some misunderstanding about the nature of this situation. We are not here for cultural exchange. We are here to establish hegemony authority over human territories. We understand completely." Marcus Johnson chimed in, "And we think that's wonderful. What better way to establish understanding between our peoples than through educational cooperation? We've prepared some demonstration lessons that we think you'll find absolutely fascinating." Admiral Vextel found himself in the unprecedented position of trying to explain the concept of military conquest to people who kept interpreting it as an opportunity for collaborative learning. "You want to play games with my invasion fleet?" he asked Marcus, whose suggestion of cooperative physical education activities had left the Admiral questioning his grasp of basic military terminology. "Not just games, educational games," Dr. Martinez clarified. "Games that teach important skills like following directions, spatial awareness, and team coordination. We believe that interactive learning is much more effective than traditional instruction methods." Admiral Vextel realized he was dealing with humans who genuinely believed that every situation, including military invasion, was an opportunity for mutual education and improvement. It was either the most naive response to military conquest in galactic history, or the most sophisticated form of psychological warfare ever developed. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Admiral Vextel trying to explain military occupation procedures, and the humans responding with suggestions for making those procedures more educational and beneficial for everyone involved. When Dr. Martinez proposed that invasion protocols would be more effective if they incorporated hands-on learning experiences and culturally sensitive integration activities, Admiral Vextel finally understood that he wasn't dealing with military strategy or diplomatic maneuvering. He was dealing with humans who were so fundamentally optimistic about the possibility of cooperation that they couldn't conceive of a situation that wouldn't be improved by education, friendship, and collaborative problem-solving. The first assault launched 6 hours after the educational delegation returned to their ship. Admiral Vextel chose New Geneva, a major human colony with significant strategic value, as his primary target. The attack proceeded flawlessly. Hegemony forces achieved orbital supremacy, neutralized defensive installations, and deployed ground troops to secure key facilities. It was a textbook military operation that accomplished all tactical objectives with minimal casualties. Everything went according to plan until hegemony troops encountered human civilian populations. Colonel Zarthik, commanding the ground assault, filed the first report that indicated something was seriously wrong with the invasion. "Admiral, we have secured all strategic objectives and established occupation protocols. However, human-civilian response is Unprecedented. Explain. Sir, when we announced the establishment of hegemony authority and ordered civilians to report to process Sing centers, they responded by organizing welcome committees. Admiral Vextel felt a familiar sensation of reality, becoming unmoored from logic. Welcome committees, yes, sir. They've established what they call friendship stations where they're providing food, entertainment, and educational presentations about human culture to our troops. They appear to be treating the occupation as a cultural exchange program. Colonel Zarthak's voice carried the bewildered tone of a professional soldier trying to describe events that had no precedent in military experience. Admiral, our troops are not establishing military control over strategic positions. They are attending lectures about human agricultural techniques and participating in cultural demonstration activities. Are the humans offering resistance to occupation procedures? No, sir. They are cooperating fully with all military directives, but they are treating cooperation as if it were collaboration. They keep asking our soldiers if they have questions about human society, and they keep offering to demonstrate human recreational activities. Colonel Zarthak paused, and Admiral Vextel could hear the complete bewilderment in his voice. Admiral, one of our tactical squads has learned to square dance. The emergency staff meeting that followed Colonel Zarthak's report was unlike anything in hegemony military history. Admiral Vextel found himself addressing a group of senior officers who were struggling to analyze a military situation that defied every category of strategic planning. How? Admiral Vextel asked. Do you establish military occupation over a population that responds to conquest by organizing friendship activities? Intelligence Coordinator Zekmer consulted reports that painted an increasingly surreal picture of successful military operations being transformed into community outreach programs. Admiral, human civilians appear to be treating our occupation forces as honored guests who have come to learn about human culture. Our xenopsychology specialists believe humans may be attempting to compromise our military effectiveness through social integration, strategic analyst Tulvarin added. By involving our troops in human community activities, they may be trying to create emotional bonds that would interfere with occupation duties. It was a reasonable theory until Colonel Zarthak's next report arrived. Admiral, the humans have established what they call support services for our occupation forces. They're providing language instruction, cultural orientation, and assistance programs for troops experiencing adjustment difficulties. Adjustment difficulties, yes, sir. They've organized recreational activities for soldiers who are feeling homesick, established counseling services for troops experiencing culture shock, and created support groups for personnel who are having trouble adapting to local conditions. Colonel Zarthak's voice took on the tone of someone reporting events that challenged his understanding of reality. Admiral, our troops are not just being taught about human culture, they are being cared for. The humans are treating our occupation force as if we were exchange students who need help adapting to a new environment. The reports continued to describe the most successful failed military occupation in galactic history. Hegemony forces had achieved complete tactical control of human territories. Civilian resistance was non-existent. Military objectives were being accomplished ahead of schedule. But instead of establishing hegemony authority, the occupation was somehow turning into the largest cultural exchange program in military history. Human civilians were teaching hegemony soldiers about human art, music, literature, and social customs. Hegemony troops were learning human languages, participating in human recreational activities, and forming personal friendships with human families. Most disturbing of all, the hegemony soldiers seemed to be genuinely enjoying themselves. Admiral, Colonel Zarthak reported during his weekly briefing, morale among occupation forces is higher than I've ever recorded. Troops are enthusiastic about their assignments, eager to learn more about human culture, and many are requesting extensions of their deployment periods. Extensions? Yes, sir. Our soldiers have formed close relationships with human communities and don't want to be reassigned. Some have requested permission to bring their families to human worlds so they can participate in cultural exchange programs. Admiral Vexthal realized that humans had achieved something unprecedented in military history. They had conquered their conquerors through aggressive friendliness. The pattern repeated itself across every human world. Terra Nova established integration, assistance programs where humans helped hegemony administrators understand human society, while offering suggestions for improving occupation procedures. New Earth created cultural immersion centers, where hegemony troops could experience authentic human family life. Harmony Station organized cooperation workshops where humans and hegemony personnel worked together on community improvement projects. Each world followed the same template. Complete military defeat followed by enthusiastic cooperation that somehow left the humans in effective control of the situation. Despite having no formal authority, the psychological evaluations of returning hegemony troops painted a picture that military psychiatrists found deeply concerning. Soldiers were developing genuine affection for human populations. They were questioning the necessity of military occupation when humans seemed so willing to cooperate. Many were expressing beliefs that cooperation was more effective than force for achieving interspecies harmony. Admiral Chief Medical Officer Veltara reported, "Our troops are not being demoralized or defeated. They are being converted. They are adopting human perspectives about the nature of interspecies relations." Admiral Vexthal was facing the most insidious form of defeat imaginable, victory that transformed the victor into the vanquished through the simple expedient of treating enemies like friends. But the true scope of human strategy became clear when Admiral Vexthal received an urgent communication from Hegemony High Command that changed everything he thought he understood about the invasion. "Admiral, why are we receiving requests from 17 different hegemony member species asking for human Saint ill integration procedures?" Supreme Commander Talvak's message revealed that the human approach to occupation wasn't just affecting Admiral Vexthal's forces. Word of human cooperation methods had spread throughout the galaxy, and other species were beginning to question why their own integration into hegemony civilization hadn't involved the same level of respect and mutual benefit that humans were offering to their conquerors. "Admiral, our intelligence services report that human occupation procedures are being discussed throughout the galaxy as examples of enlightened integration policy. Several long-standing member species are requesting renegotiation of their hegemony status based on what they call the human model." The message continued with information that sent Admiral Vexthal's strategic calculations into complete disarray. "Admiral, we are facing demands for political reform throughout hegemony space. The human approach is being cited as evidence that our standard integration procedures are unnecessarily restrictive and insufficiently respectful of member species autonomy." Admiral Vexthal read the message 3 times before grasping its full implications. Humans hadn't just defeated his invasion through superior friendship techniques. They had used his invasion as a demonstration project to show the entire galaxy that there were better ways to organize interspecies relations than the hierarchical system that had governed the hegemony for 3 millennia. The humans had conquered his empire by proving that cooperation worked better than conquest. The emergency council meeting with hegemony leadership was held via secured communication from Admiral Vexthal's flagship, Supreme Commander Talvak, Political Coordinator Zenkar, Intelligence Director Kolv Th, and the full Strategic Planning Council participated in what became the most important military conference in galactic history. Admiral Vexthal, Supreme Commander Talvak began explain how a militarily successful invasion has resulted in member species demanding political reforms based on the policies of conquered populations. Admiral Vexthal had prepared for this moment, but explaining the situation still felt like describing events from an alternate universe where military logic had been replaced by educational enthusiasm. "Supreme Commander, humans have responded to conquest by treating it as an opportunity for cooperative integration. Instead of resisting our authority, they have demonstrated alternative methods of exercising that authority that produce superior results for both occupiers and occupied populations." He paused, trying to find military terminology for concepts that had no precedent in strategic doctrine. "They have not challenged our right to establish authority over their territories. They have challenged our methods of exercising that authority by proving that cooperation achieves our stated objectives more effectively than traditional occupation procedures. Political coordinator Zenkar asked the question that everyone was thinking. Admiral, are you saying that humans have defeated our invasion by being better at invasion than we are? That's remarkably accurate, coordinator. Humans have demonstrated that integration can be achieved more effectively through partnership than through domination, and that such integration produces higher levels of satisfaction, cooperation, and strategic benefit for all parties involved. Intelligence Director Kolv TH activated displays, showing comparative analysis of human integration results versus traditional hegemony integration outcomes. The data was undeniable. Human cooperation strategies achieved higher compliance rates, greater economic productivity, superior cultural stability, and stronger long-term loyalty than traditional conquest methods. Human populations under occupation report satisfaction levels 340% higher than populations integrated through standard procedures. Intelligence Director Kolv TH reported, economic productivity is up 89%. Cultural innovation has increased 156%. Most significantly, voluntary cooperation rates are approaching 100%, compared to 67% average compliance in traditional integrations. The implications were staggering. If humans could demonstrate superior integration procedures, then the entire foundation of hegemony authority was potentially undermined. Every member species that had been integrated through traditional conquest could legitimately ask why they hadn't been offered the respect, autonomy, and mutual benefit that humans were providing to their own conquerors. Supreme Commander Talvok asked the question that would reshape galactic civilization. What do the humans want? In exchange for this cooperation, Admiral Vexthal realized he had never asked humans what they wanted, mainly because they had never presented their cooperation as conditional or transactional. Supreme Commander, humans have made no demands. They appear to be genuinely satisfied with current arrangements. They're happy to be conquered. They're happy with the opportunities for cultural exchange and cooperative governance that conquest has provided. From their perspective, they are not being conquered, they are participating in an interspecies cooperation project that happens to include hegemony political authority. The silence that followed was broken by Supreme Commander Talvok as incredulous. Response: Admiral, are you telling us that humans have achieved what they wanted from the beginning, equal partnership in galactic civilization, by demonstrating that equality produces better results than hierarchy? Yes, Supreme Commander. And they have done it by proving their point so convincingly that other species throughout the galaxy are demanding similar treatment. The Emergency Council meeting continued for 8 hours as hegemony leadership grappled with the possibility that their 3,000-year approach to galactic governance might be fundamentally flawed. The conclusion was unprecedented. For the first time in hegemony history, a successful military conquest would be classified as a strategic defeat, because the conquered population had used the conquest to export their political and social ideas throughout the conquering empire. But the Council's most important decision was to implement what became known as the Cooperative Integration Initiative, a galaxy-wide program to test human-style integration methods throughout hegemony space. The pilot programs exceeded every optimistic projection. Member species satisfaction increased by an average of 312%. Administrative costs decreased by 58%. Governance conflicts dropped by 71%. Economic productivity rose 89%. Cultural innovation flourished as different species began collaborating on projects that combined their unique capabilities. Most remarkably, species that had been integrated through traditional conquest showed higher levels of loyalty to Federation goals than traditional integrations, despite having greater autonomy and cultural independence. The success was so comprehensive that the hegemony formally restructured itself as the Cooperative Federation of Advanced Beings, with a charter based on mutual respect, cultural autonomy, and collaborative decision-making. The humans who had triggered this transformation were offered leadership positions throughout the new federation. They politely declined, explaining that they preferred to contribute as equal partners rather than authorities, but eagerly accepted roles as cultural exchange coordinators and friendship facilitators. Admiral Vextel retired from military service and became the Federation's first director of cooperative integration. In his memoirs, he wrote what became one of the most quoted observations in political science: humans didn't defeat us because they were stronger or smarter than us. They defeated us because they refused to accept that defeat was necessary. When we invaded their space, they could have fought us, surrendered to us, or negotiated with us. Instead, they chose to befriend us and help us become better versions of ourselves. They won by changing the definition of victory from conquering your enemies to helping your enemies become your friends. Once they changed that definition, victory became inevitable because humans are extraordinarily good at making friends. Dr. Sarah Martinez continued her career as an elementary school teacher. When historians asked how she had developed the strategy that transformed galactic civilization, she replied with characteristic human optimism: strategy? We weren't following a strategy. We were just doing what teachers do. We saw people who needed to learn something, and we tried to help them learn it. It turned out that what they needed to learn was how to be friends with different kinds of people. Really, she added with the same enthusiasm she had shown when offering educational services to Admiral Vextel's invasion fleet, isn't that what everyone needs to learn? 5 years after the Cooperative Revolution, the annual Galactic Cooperation Festival was held on Earth, with representatives from every species in the galaxy gathering to celebrate the transformation of galactic civilization. Dr. Zara Okafor, a human academic whose theoretical work on cooperation had provided the intellectual foundation for human strategy, delivered the keynote address. Her research on cooperative victory theory had been dismissed by experts as interesting, but impractical until humans proved it worked by applying it to military invasion. The cooperative revolution succeeded, Dr. Okafor explained to the assembled delegates, not because humans had superior technology or strategy, but because humans had superior assumptions about what was possible. While other species assumed conflict was inevitable, humans assumed cooperation was possible. Most importantly, humans assumed that any situation could be improved if enough creativity and goodwill were applied to understanding what everyone really needed. This assumption turned out to be correct, but it was only tested because humans refused to accept that things had to stay the way they were. The festival's most moving moment came when former Supreme Commander Talvok, now Chief Advocate for Cooperative Governance, delivered a speech titled "The Day We Learned That Everyone Wants the Same Things." 5 years ago, I commanded forces that seemed unstoppable, Talvok said. We had superior technology, superior tactics, and 3,000 years of successful expansion. What we discovered was that humans had something we had never encountered: absolute certainty that everyone could be friends, that every situation could be improved, and that every conflict was just a misunderstanding waiting to be resolved. They didn't defeat our invasion by opposing it. They defeated it by embracing it so enthusiastically that they transformed it into something completely different. They turned our conquest into their classroom, our occupation into their opportunity, and our dominance into their demonstration of better ways to organize galactic civilization. But perhaps the most significant moment came when the children of different species, who had grown up in the post-cooperation galaxy, performed a collaborative musical composition. The music combined elements from hundreds of cultural traditions, creating harmonies that could only exist through cooperation between beings with completely different approaches to sound and meaning. The performance demonstrated that beings who grew up assuming cooperation was normal naturally developed capabilities for collaboration that previous generations would have considered impossible. The festival concluded with the signing of the Galactic Cooperation Charter, establishing cooperative resolution as the preferred method for addressing conflicts throughout the galaxy. The Charter's preamble, written collaboratively by representatives from every major species, captured the essence of what humans had taught the galaxy. We recognized that our differences are sources of strength rather than causes of conflict. We acknowledge that cooperation produces better outcomes than competition. that understanding serves our interests better than dominance, and that the security and prosperity of each species depends upon the security and prosperity of all species. Dr. Sarah Martinez was invited to add the final signature to the charter. She approached the signing ceremony with the same friendly enthusiasm she had shown when greeting Admiral Vexthel's invasion fleet. "This is wonderful," she said, speaking to the assembled representatives with the same tone she might use when addressing a successful school project. "It's so exciting to see how much everyone has learned and grown. I'm proud of all of you for working together to create something that serves everyone's needs." Her simple words captured what humans had contributed to galactic civilization. Not just new methods for resolving conflicts, but fundamental optimism about the possibilities for improvement in any situation involving intelligent beings willing to learn from each other. 10 years after the invasion that changed everything, Dr. Okafor published the definitive analysis of the cooperative revolution. Her book, When Everyone Wins: The Transformation of Galactic Civilization Through Applied Optimism, became required reading throughout the galaxy. The cooperative revolution succeeded, Dr. Okafor concluded, because humans approached the challenge of military invasion not as a problem to be solved through better tactics, but as an opportunity to demonstrate better methods for achieving the goals that both sides actually wanted. The genius of the human approach was recognizing that the hegemony's invasion was motivated by legitimate goals: stability, security, and beneficial integration, and that those goals could be achieved more effectively through cooperation than through conquest. By helping the hegemony achieve their goals better than they could through force, humans transformed enemies into partners and conflict into collaboration. The book's final chapter described the galaxy that had emerged from the cooperative revolution, a civilization where conflicts were resolved through collaborative problem solving, where differences between species were celebrated as sources of innovation, and where the security of each community depended upon contributing to the security of all communities. But perhaps most importantly, it was a galaxy where the next generation was growing up with the assumption that cooperation was normal, that differences were valuable, and that any challenge could be overcome through creativity, understanding, and willingness to work together. The children growing up in the post-cooperation galaxy, Dr. Okafor wrote, will face challenges we cannot imagine, but they will face them with capabilities for collaboration that previous generations never developed. They will not just inherit the galaxy we built together, they will continue building it together. The memorial established on New Geneva commemorated not just human strategic success, but the galaxy-wide recognition that cooperation was more powerful than conquest. The memorial was a playground where children from dozens of species could play together, learn from each other, and form the friendships that would ensure future conflicts would be resolved through partnership rather than force. The inscription reads simply, "They thought they could win, but humans changed the rules by showing everyone how to win together." And on clear days, visitors could still hear the echoes of children's laughter and educational songs, reminding everyone that the most powerful force in the universe was the human belief that any situation could be improved if enough creativity and friendship were applied to helping everyone discover their better natures. The galaxy had learned that humans didn't change the rules to gain an advantage. They changed the rules to create advantages for everyone, proving that the most effective military strategy was convincing your enemies that they didn't need to be your enemies at all. In the end, the humans who greeted a galactic invasion with nursery rhymes and offers of cultural exchange had not just won a war, they had revealed that war itself was an obsolete method for achieving what intelligent beings actually wanted: security, prosperity, respect, and the opportunity to contribute to something larger than themselves. And that revelation, spread through educational programs and friendship initiatives, had transformed not just the outcome of one invasion, but the fundamental nature of galactic civilization itself, creating a universe where the greatest victory was ensuring that everyone could win together. Hey there, incredible humans. If this epic tale about conquering a galactic empire through aggressive friendliness didn't leave you bursting with pride at our species' beautiful, terrifying optimism, I don't know what will. The story shows that our greatest superpower isn't our military might, it's our absolute refusal to accept that enemies have to stay enemies. Think about it, this is peak human behavior. When faced with the galaxy's most powerful invasion fleet, we don't just fight or surrender. We board their flagship with educational materials and offer to teach them square dancing. We treat military occupation like the ultimate cultural exchange program. I want to know, what's the most aggressively cooperative thing you've ever witnessed? Drop a comment about a time someone turned conflict into friendship through sheer determined kindness. And smash that like button if you're proud to be part of the species that weaponizes friendship. I've got another mind-blowing story coming up about what happens when humans discover the galaxy's most advanced meditation techniques and accidentally turn enlightenment into a competitive sport. Trust me, you'll want to see how we make inner peace extreme. Until next time, remember, when humans change the rules, we make the game better for everyone. And apparently, that's the most dangerous superpower in the universe. See you in the next one. You beautiful, rule-changing, empire-conquering through kindness legends.